For years, the relationship between the United States and Canada was treated as untouchable. Two economies tied together by geography, by energy, by trade, by history. But behind closed doors, something changed. Because when Donald Trump returned to the White House, his administration didn't just revive old trade war tactics, it escalated them. And according to insiders in Ottawa, one threat in particular sent shockwaves through Canada's government faster than anyone expected. A new round of aggressive tariffs. Not symbolic tariffs, not political theater. Real economic pressure targeting critical Canadian industries. Steel, rare earth minerals, auto manufacturing, energy exports. And for a moment, Canada looked cornered. Millions of Canadian jobs depended on American business. Entire industries were built around U.S. access. If Washington decided to squeeze Canada economically, the damage could be massive. But what happened next caught Wall Street completely off guard. Because while cameras focused on Trump's speeches and rising tensions in Washington, something extremely unusual was happening behind the scenes. China started moving.
The United States dictates the terms. We have the negotiation. We can come to a mutually successful outcome.
CUSMA is up for review in July. Mexico has a date to sit down with the U.S., but Canada does not.
If we can, get some changes in Canadian trade practices, it's going to help me get over the political hump that we face here in the United States. So I think there are things that can be done. We're kind of at the end of our rope in just asking for them to do this.
Last year, most provinces and territories stripped American booze from stores, an act of retaliation against Trump's tariffs and his threats.
It is outrageous that Canada will not put U.S. spirits on the shelf. It is insulting.
I'm sorry, folks, I don't trust President Trump.
Ontario's premier says he's not backing down unless Trump drops his tariffs and the free trade deal is done.
And according to financial analysts, the moves were so strategic that most American investors didn't realize what was happening until billions had already shifted across global markets. It reportedly started with a closed-door meeting in Vancouver. No press conference, no official announcement, no viral headlines. Just trade officials, energy executives, and financial representatives connected to major Chinese import networks. At first, it looked routine, but within weeks, analysts noticed something strange. Chinese buyers suddenly increased interest in Canadian commodities. Not small purchases, massive ones. Oil, natural gas, lithium, nickel, agricultural exports. The exact sectors vulnerable to American tariffs suddenly had a new buyer stepping in, and that changed everything. Because Trump's economic strategy relied on leverage.
I want to talk to you or ask you questions about the new economic coercion that Mr. Trump is directing at our next door neighbor, as well as 7 European allies and Britain. He's talking about 10% tariffs until he's allowed to buy Greenland on 8 countries, and they are going to go up to 25% in June. So my question is, how can Canada accept this? What are you going to do about it, including adding to the military presence in Greenland? And what are you going to tell Mr. Trump? What's your message to Mr. Trump about this economic coercion if you meet him in Davos?
Thank you for this very precise question. It's a serious situation, and we're concerned. We're concerned about this escalation, to be absolutely clear. We always will support sovereignty and territorial integrity of countries wherever their geographic location is. The future of Greenland, decisions about the future of Greenland are for Greenland and Denmark to decide. And the security.
The idea was simple. America was Canada's biggest customer, meaning Canada couldn't afford to fight back. But if another global superpower helped absorb Canadian exports, that leverage weakens instantly, and Beijing understood that. Now officially, China never framed this as supporting Canada. That would have triggered international backlash immediately. Instead, Chinese state-linked firms reportedly approached it like business, just business. But economists watching the situation noticed the timing was almost impossible to ignore. The tariff threats rise and suddenly Chinese demand for Canadian resources spikes at the exact same moment. That's when investors started paying attention, because markets don't care about speeches. Markets care about speeches. Markets care about money flow. And the money flow was changing fast. Canadian energy stocks started stabilizing. Mining companies began recovering. Shipping forecasts improved. Meanwhile, American markets became increasingly nervous about retaliation risks, especially in sectors deeply connected to North American supply chains. Then came the moment that really shook Wall Street. A leaked report suggested several Asian investment groups were considering long-term infrastructure partnerships tied to Canadian Arctic trade routes. And Quote.
Just getting back to the U.S. Undersecretary of War's announcement yesterday, they're pausing participation in this National Defense Board. To your knowledge, when was the last time Canadian and American officials at this board met, and how dramatic do you think this pause could be on mutual defense cooperation between the two countries?
First thing, the last time, to my knowledge, is the end of 2024. So it hasn't met. It's supposed to meet biannually, but it hasn't met since then. I wouldn't overplay. It has a long heritage, but I wouldn't overplay the importance of this. Where we have many aspects of very close defense cooperation with the United States, as you know, our closest defense cooperation. I'll give you the example of NORAD, and also put this in context of enormous investments that we're making in NORAD, over $40 billion that we're making in NORAD. $8 billion. One of the first announcements I made as Prime Minister was over $6.5 billion in what's called over-the-horizon radar in Nunavut, which helps protect in hypersonic missiles and others. Investments that we're making that
got attention immediately. Because the Arctic isn't just ice anymore, it's the future battlefield of global trade. As climate conditions slowly reshape shipping possibilities, countries are racing to control future trade corridors across the North. Russia knows it, China knows it, Canada knows it, and suddenly, American analysts realized Canada might be positioning itself far beyond USS dependence. That possibility terrified markets, not because Canada was becoming anti-American, but because it was becoming less controllable. And for decades, Washington benefited enormously from Canada's economic dependence. Energy pipelines, manufacturing chains, defense agreements, banking systems, the integration gave America enormous influence. But now, Canada appeared to be testing alternative partnerships, quietly, strategically. And Wall Street hates uncertainty, especially geopolitical uncertainty. Financial media started noticing unusual market behavior. Canadian firms previously considered vulnerable suddenly gained investor confidence. Meanwhile, some U.S. manufacturing companies warned that escalating tariffs could actually increase costs for American consumers. That's the part many people don't understand about trade wars. They rarely stay one-sided. Modern economies are too interconnected. Punishing another country often creates collateral damage at home, and investors were beginning to realize exactly that. Then came another twist. Reports emerged that several Chinese-linked firms were exploring expanded battery production partnerships involving Canadian lithium supplies. Now this was a serious problem for Washington, because the future global economy runs on batteries, electric vehicles, military technology, electric vehicles, military technology, AI infrastructure. Canada possesses enormous reserves of critical minerals needed for all of it. If China secured stronger access to those resources, the geopolitical consequences could stretch for decades. Suddenly, this wasn't just about tariffs anymore. It became a strategic competition over the future industrial economy itself. And that's when the political temperature exploded. American commentators accused Canada of drifting toward Beijing. Canadian officials pushed back immediately, insisting they were simply protecting national economic interests. But behind closed doors, reports suggested Ottawa was furious, because from their perspective, they were being forced into diversification. While America threatened Canada economically every election cycle, Canadian leaders knew they needed backup options. No country wants total dependence on a single partner, especially when politics become unpredictable, and China saw opportunity in that fear. Beijing didn't need Canada to become an ally. It simply needed Canada to become an ally. It simply needed Canada to become more economically independent from Washington. Even a small shift could weaken American leverage globally. That's what made the situation so dangerous, because both sides understood the bigger game being played. This wasn't really about tariffs anymore. It was about influence, control, and the future balance of economic power. Then Wall Street got hit with another surprise. Currency traders began noticing unusual strength in sectors tied to Canadian exports despite growing political tension. Normally, uncertainty causes weakness, but instead, international demand was cushioning the pressure. Some analysts even warned that Trump's aggressive tactics might accidentally accelerate Canada's push toward Asia, a scenario few American strategists wanted, because once supply chains shift internationally, they don't always come back. History proves that. Companies adapt. Markets adapt. Over time, entirely new economic alliances can emerge from temporary political possibility started triggering serious concern inside financial circles, especially among multinational corporations that depend on stable North American cooperation. Then came the media war. American outlets framed the situation as Canada playing both sides, Chinese media painted it differently. They described China as a stabilizing economic force supporting open trade while America embraced economic nationalism. And Canada stayed unusually quiet. That silence made the story even bigger, because when governments stop talking publicly, it usually means intense negotiations are happening privately. And according to multiple economic observers, Canada's strategy may have been deliberate. Avoid direct confrontation, avoid public escalation, quietly build alternatives. That approach allowed Ottawa to reduce panic while expanding options behind the scenes. And from a strategic perspective, it was smart. Because the moment markets believe a country has no alternatives, it loses negotiating power instantly. But if Canada could demonstrate global demand beyond the United States, the entire balance changes. More multipolar. Countries are building backup systems everywhere. New trade corridors, new energy alliances, new supply chains, new financial partnerships. And Canada may have quietly started preparing for that future long before the public noticed. The scariest part? This may only be the beginning. Because if geopolitical tensions continue rising, countries everywhere could start choosing flexibility over loyalty. And once that happens, the economic world order America dominated for decades becomes far harder to control. Which raises the biggest question of all. Did Trump's tariff threats pressure Canada or accidentally push it into building a future beyond American influence? Because judging by what happened next, Wall Street may still be trying to figure that out right now.